My name is Jane, and I never imagined that a day meant to honor my father would turn into a battlefield. It was just another ordinary Tuesday morning when I woke up, the sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, casting a warm glow over everything. But that day, warmth was the last thing on my mind. Instead, dread filled my stomach as I prepared to attend the reading of my father's will. My father, a man of integrity and hard work, had always taught us the value of family over money. Yet, as I glanced in the mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. You see, my sister Jenna and I had always been close. At least I thought we were. But as we grew older, the subtle currents of rivalry began to weave their way into our relationship. I noticed her jealousy over my achievements, the way she would downplay my successes with a casual comment. It was easy to brush it off back then. Sibling rivalry, right? But that day, as I sat in the car on my way to the law office, my gut told me this rivalry had morphed into something far more sinister. When we arrived, I was struck by the heaviness in the air. The small conference room was filled with familiar faces. My mother, her eyes red from crying. Our lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who always seemed to be hiding behind his glasses. And my sister, who was tapping her foot nervously. I couldn't help but wonder, what had she been up to? The tension was palpable as Mr. Thompson began reading the will, his voice steady but somber. My heart raced as I listened to my father's final words. He spoke of love, gratitude, and the importance of family. But then came the part that sent a chill down my spine. To my daughters Lila and Jenna, I leave equal shares of my estate. It sounded fair, but I could sense Jenna's eyes narrowing, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. I knew my sister well enough to recognize that glint of greed lurking just beneath the surface. As the reading continued, my mind raced back to our last conversation. Jenna had brought up the idea of upgrading our childhood home, claiming it needed to be modernized for sale. I had brushed it off as a silly suggestion, but now it felt like she was scheming, plotting how to get her hands on more than her fair share. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know below. After the reading concluded, the room filled with an awkward silence, punctuated only by the rustle of papers. I could see Jenna's mind working, calculating, and I felt my heart drop when she proposed we sell the house immediately. We could really cash in on it, Lila, she said, her voice dripping with false enthusiasm. But I knew that wasn't her only motive. It was almost as if she was trying to push me into a corner, to force me into agreeing with her plan. I stood my ground, reminding her that our father had wanted us to keep the house, to cherish the memories it held. But as I looked at her, I realized this wasn't just about the house. It was about power, control, and an inheritance that she believed she deserved more than I did. That realization hit me like a ton of bricks. It dawned on me that my sister was willing to do anything to seize what she thought was rightfully hers. Days passed, and Jenna grew more desperate. She started showing up unannounced, dropping hints about how we should liquidate the property, how much money we could make. I could see the determination in her eyes, the lengths she was willing to go to achieve her goal. It made my skin crawl, and I found myself withdrawing, keeping my distance. I felt betrayed, not just by her actions, but by the sister I thought I knew. Then came the fateful day when I discovered Jenna's plan to steal our inheritance. I was going through some old boxes in the attic, searching for keepsakes to remind me of our father, when I stumbled upon something unexpected, a series of documents that detailed Jenna's attempts to secure the property for herself. A chill ran down my spine as I read through the papers, her signature glaring back at me. She had been contacting real estate agents, trying to get a head start on selling the house without my consent. The betrayal stung more than I could have imagined. In that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't let her take what was rightfully ours, what my father had worked so hard for. I needed to take action, and I needed to do it quickly. So I did something drastic. I froze her bank account. I knew it would send a message. This wasn't just about the money. It was about standing up for what was right, about honoring our father's legacy. As I stood there, the weight of my decision pressed heavily on my chest. I had crossed a line, but in my heart, I believed it was necessary. I wanted Jenna to feel the same fear I had felt when I discovered her betrayal. Little did I know that this would only be the beginning of a much larger conflict between us, one that would shake the foundations of our family and test the limits of our bond. In the days that followed, I braced myself for the inevitable fallout. How would Jenna react? Would she fight back? Would she try to manipulate our mother into taking her side? As I stared out the window, lost in thought, I couldn't help but wonder how far I was willing to go to protect our father's legacy and ultimately myself. What was I prepared to sacrifice in the name of justice? The battle lines were drawn, and I had no idea what awaited me next. The moment Jenna found out about her frozen account was like watching a storm roll in from a distance. Dark clouds gathering, heavy with the promise of chaos. I had steeled myself for the confrontation, but nothing could have prepared me for the sheer fury that erupted when she stormed into my apartment just days later. Her eyes were blazing, and for a moment, I thought she might actually explode. "Did you really think you could get away with this?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. I felt a mixture of anger and dread coiling inside me. There she was, my sister, the person I had grown up with, now transformed into someone I barely recognized. Get away with what, Jenna? Trying to protect what's left of our father's legacy. You can't just ignore the truth because it doesn't suit you, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. She laughed, a harsh, humorless sound that cut through the tension. Protecting Dad's legacy, or just trying to control everything. You're acting like some kind of guardian of righteousness, but you're just being petty. You think this is about the money. It's not. This is about me and what I deserve. I felt my blood boil at her words. Deserve? You think you deserve to take what isn't yours? To betray our father's memory like that? Jenna took a step closer, her face contorted with anger and hurt. You don't understand. You've always been the good one, the favorite. I was just trying to get what I could, because I felt like I had nothing. You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always been the responsible one, the one who followed the rules, while Jenna had always danced around the edges, chasing after fleeting dreams. But was I really the favorite? Or had I just been the one to shoulder the expectations? I do know what it's like, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I know what it's like to feel lost and want more, but that doesn't justify what you did. There are ways to get what you want without betraying family, she scoffed, crossing her arms defensively. Family? Is that what you call this? You think this is family? You've turned against me. You're just like Mom, quick to judge and slow to understand. You don't even care about me. I felt my heart ache at her words, the truth of her accusations sinking in. Did I care about her, or was I too wrapped up in the betrayal to see her pain? The lines between right and wrong were blurring, and I was left standing in the middle, unsure of where to go next. I do care, Jenna, I said softly, my voice almost a whisper now, but I can't stand by and watch you destroy everything our dad worked for. You need to understand that. She shook her head, clearly not hearing me. You think this is over? You've just awakened a sleeping giant. I won't let you ruin my life because you want to play the moral high ground. I'm going to fight back. With that, she turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, heart racing, feeling the aftermath of our confrontation wash over me like a tidal wave. I had underestimated her, and I knew it. This wasn't going to end with just one fight. It was the beginning of a war. The following days were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I found myself checking my phone constantly, waiting for her to retaliate, for her to reach out to our mom, or for her to come up with some scheme to turn the rest of the family against me. I had seen how she operated. She was a master manipulator, and I was sure she was already plotting her next move. I tried to focus on work, to immerse myself in the tasks at hand, but all I could think about was the brewing storm. My mind raced with scenarios, each more disastrous than the last. What if she somehow got a hold of the will? What if she tried to undermine my position? As the days dragged on, the tension in my chest only grew heavier. Then, one evening, I received a call from our mother. My heart sank as I answered, knowing Jenna had likely put her spin on things. "Hey, sweetie, can we talk?" Mom's voice was soft, but edged with concern. "Sure, Mom. What's up?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "I just wanted to check in on you after everything that happened with Jenna. She's been really upset, and I want to make sure you're okay." A knot formed in my stomach. "I'm fine, but I'm worried about her. She's not acting like herself, and I'm not sure how to help." "Maybe you should reach out to her," Mom suggested cautiously. "She's been really hurt, and I know this is hard on both of you." "Mom, she tried to steal our inheritance. How can I reach out after that?" I know, but family is complicated. We need to find a way to come together." The conversation continued, weaving through the complexities of family loyalty and betrayal. Mom's perspective was one I hadn't considered much. She spoke of forgiveness and understanding, but all I could think about was the gravity of Jenna's actions. By the end of the call, I felt even more conflicted. I had to protect what was right, but at what cost? As I hung up, a sense of dread washed over me. I could feel Jenna's anger lurking just beneath the surface, and I knew this was far from over. I spent the next few days in a haze, the weight of the situation pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at a crossroads, with one path leading to a bitter, fractured relationship with my sister, and the other to a more complicated, perhaps more painful, journey of reconciliation. My mind kept replaying the moment during the will reading when I saw the look on Jenna's face, the mixture of shock and desperation, as she realized that her plan to take our inheritance was foiled. That moment felt like it had etched itself into my memory, a constant reminder of the betrayal. I had always thought of Jenna as my partner in crime, my confidant, the person who knew me best. We shared everything growing up, from birthday parties to late-night secrets whispered under the covers. But now, that bond felt like it had been severed, and I wasn't sure if it could be repaired. As I scrolled through social media, I noticed how many friends posted about their sisters, their support, their love, their shared memories. It made my heart ache. I felt so alone in this mess, and I wondered if I was being too harsh. After all, she was still my sister. Did blood really run thicker than water? One evening, I decided to dive into work to distract myself. I found solace in the rhythm of my tasks, the mundane nature of my daily routine, providing a welcome break from my spiraling thoughts. I had a project to finish, and I threw myself into it with a ferocity I hadn't felt in a while. Just as I was starting to feel a little more in control, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jenna. My heart raced as I hesitated to open it. Was this the moment she would apologize? Would she finally acknowledge the hurt she caused? I took a deep breath and clicked on the notification. The message was short and blunt. "We need to talk." My stomach twisted in knots. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, weighing my options. Should I respond? Part of me wanted to ignore it altogether, to pretend that everything was fine, and that my sister hadn't just attempted to rob me blind. But another part, the part that still held on to hope, urged me to engage. I replied with a simple, "When?" She responded almost immediately, suggesting we meet at a coffee shop near my work. I felt a mix of dread and anticipation swirl inside me. I had no idea what to expect. I spent the next day oscillating between anger and anxiety, my mind racing with potential scenarios. Would she be defensive? Would she try to downplay her actions? Or perhaps, just maybe, would she take responsibility? The day of the meeting arrived, and as I walked into the coffee shop, my heart pounded in my chest. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and the chatter of other customers created a familiar backdrop, yet it felt so foreign to me. I spotted Jenna sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. She looked up as I approached, her expression guarded. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, her voice lacking its usual warmth. I could see shadows beneath her eyes, hints of sleepless nights and worry. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Jenna spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't mean for it to go that far." I blinked, caught off guard by her admission. "You didn't mean for it to go that far? Jenna, you tried to steal our inheritance. That's not something you just accidentally do." I know, she said, frustration creeping into her tone. I thought maybe if I could just get a little bit more, everything would be okay. We could fix things, Fix things? By taking what's rightfully mine." My voice rose, and I could feel the anger bubbling up again. "Listen," she continued, her hands trembling slightly. "I thought I was doing what was best for both of us. I was so desperate after Mom and Dad passed that I didn't think straight. I was drowning, and it felt like this was my only way out." Her words struck a nerve, a flicker of understanding breaking through my anger. I could see the pain in her eyes, the vulnerability that lay beneath her misguided choices. But even as I felt a pang of sympathy, I couldn't ignore the damage she had caused. "You could have talked to me. We could have worked through it together." "I know, and I should have," she said, her voice cracking. "But I was afraid you wouldn't understand, that you would judge me. Maybe you should have trusted me more." I shot back, my voice still firm, but my heart beginning to soften. We went back and forth like this for what felt like hours, both of us wrestling with the emotions of betrayal, fear, and hurt. It was exhausting, yet somewhere in the midst of the confrontation, I started to realize that perhaps this wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about the loss of our parents, the grief we had both been struggling to navigate in our own ways. Finally, we reached an impasse. Jenna looked down at her coffee, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just want my sister back," she whispered, and in that moment, something shifted within me. The anger I had held onto so tightly began to loosen its grip, replaced by an overwhelming sadness for what we had lost. "Maybe we can find our way back," I said softly, my heart aching for the sister I once knew, the sister I still loved, despite everything. But even as I said those words, a small voice in the back of my mind reminded me that trust was not so easily regained. It would take time, and I couldn't shake the lingering fear that this wasn't the end of our troubles. The road ahead felt uncertain, but perhaps we had taken the first step toward healing. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around us like a heavy blanket. I knew I had to be cautious. It was as if we were both standing on a tightrope, each step forward a precarious balancing act between forgiveness and resentment. It was painful, but I was willing to try. After all, family was supposed to mean something, right? Yet part of me couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before the storm. Over the next few days, I tried to reach out to Jenna more, attempting to bridge the chasm that had formed between us. I invited her over for dinner, hoping that a relaxed environment might help ease the tension. I made her favorite dish, lasagna, the kind Mom used to make when we were kids, layered with love and memories. As I set the table, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps if we could just talk, we could begin to mend what had been broken. When she arrived, I noticed the familiar hesitation in her posture, the way she stood just inside the doorway, unsure of how to cross that threshold into our shared history. I smiled, attempting to reassure her. "Come on in. It's just lasagna. No big deal," I said, trying to keep the mood light. She stepped in slowly, her eyes darting around the room, landing on the family photos hanging on the walls. There was one of us at the beach, sun-kissed and carefree, a snapshot of pure joy. I could almost hear our laughter echoing through the years. But now that laughter felt like a distant memory. As we sat down to eat, the initial silence was deafening. The only sounds were the clinking of forks against plates and the occasional sigh. I glanced up at her, trying to read her expression. She seemed lost in thought, and I wondered if she was thinking about the same things I was. Our childhood, our parents, the way we used to be inseparable. "Remember when we tried to build that treehouse in the backyard?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "We thought we could totally do it ourselves." It ended up being a complete disaster. Jenna chuckled softly, a hint of warmth returning to her eyes. "Yeah, and Dad had to come out and help us because we got stuck in the tree." That shared memory lit a spark, and for a moment we were just two sisters, reminiscing about our past. But the undertones of tension still lingered, hovering just out of reach. As dinner progressed, we began to talk more openly. I could see Jenna grappling with her emotions, the guilt of her actions still weighing heavily on her. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I didn't want to lose everything our parents worked for. I cut her off gently. "You thought you had to take control. I get that. But we could have worked together." She nodded, her face falling once more. "I know, I guess I was afraid you wouldn't understand. I might not have liked it, but I would have listened. I always have." It felt like a step forward, yet the reality of our situation loomed over us like a dark cloud. After dinner, we settled onto the couch, the remnants of our meal lingering in the air. I turned on the TV, searching for a distraction, but all I could think about was how fragile this moment felt. As the evening progressed, Jenna's phone buzzed repeatedly, drawing her attention away from our conversation. I could see the unease in her eyes when she glanced at the screen. "It's just work," she said, her voice slightly defensive. "Are you sure? It seems like it's more than that." I probed gently. She sighed, running her fingers through her hair, a gesture I recognized as her way of dealing with stress. "There's been a lot going on. I'm just trying to keep my head above water." I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I felt that old wall creeping back in, the one that had been built with secrets and lies. "I know it's tough, but we're in this together, remember?" For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes again. Maybe we could rebuild, piece by piece. But that hope was quickly overshadowed by the reality of the situation. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong step would shatter whatever progress we'd made. As the night drew to a close, I walked Jenna to the door, a sense of unease still hanging in the air. "Thanks for coming over," I said, forcing a smile despite the knot in my stomach. "Thanks for dinner. I really appreciate it," she replied, her voice quiet. We stood there for a moment, the weight of unspoken words pressing against us. I wanted to say something profound, to seal our fragile truce with a promise of better days ahead, but all I could manage was a nod. As she walked away, I felt a pang of loss. It was bittersweet, this tentative step forward, and I couldn't help but wonder if it would ever be enough to fully bridge the gap between us. The following days passed in a blur of routine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jenna had become distant again, her work consuming her time, and my attempts to reach out felt increasingly futile. One afternoon, as I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, I received an email that made my heart race. It was from the bank, and the subject line read, "Important update regarding your account." I clicked on it, my breath hitching as I read through the message. The bank had flagged some suspicious activity on Jenna's account. I felt a knot twist in my stomach as I considered the implications. Was she still trying to manipulate the situation? I had worked so hard to forgive her, to open up a line of communication, but here was yet another layer of deceit. My mind raced with thoughts as I weighed my options. Could I trust her again? Or was this a sign that the bond we were trying to rebuild was more fragile than I had hoped? All I knew was that I needed to act. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions, but this felt like a breaking point. I knew I had to confront Jenna. I couldn't let this simmer beneath the surface any longer. My heart pounded in my chest as I considered how to approach her. I thought about the last time we'd spoken, how I had been trying so hard to keep things civil, to show her that I was willing to forgive and move forward. But now, this email felt like a slap in the face. A reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our family just weeks before. I decided to wait for the weekend to bring it up, hoping that in a quieter moment, we could talk without distractions. Saturday arrived, and I nervously paced around my living room, rehearsing what I would say. It felt strange to be preparing for a confrontation with my sister, the person I'd grown up with and shared so many memories. But the weight of suspicion loomed over me, and I couldn't let it go any longer. When Jenna arrived, she seemed cheerful, completely oblivious to the turmoil churning inside me. We exchanged casual pleasantries, and I tried to mirror her lightheartedness, even as my insides twisted with anxiety. I offered her coffee, and we settled down at the kitchen table, the very same spot where I had uncovered that email. I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I steeled myself for what was to come. "Jenna, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite my nerves. Her smile faltered slightly, and I saw the flicker of concern in her eyes. "I received an email from the bank about your account." She looked confused for a moment before she replied, "What do you mean? What happened?" I could see her trying to piece together the situation. "They flagged some suspicious activity," I said, watching her reaction closely. It made me think. We've been trying to rebuild our relationship, but I can't help but feel like you're still hiding things from me. Jenna's expression shifted, and for a brief moment, I saw a flash of defensiveness. "What are you suggesting? That I'm trying to take money from the inheritance? I thought we were past that." "I don't want to believe that, Jenna, but the timing of everything is just unsettling," I replied, my voice softer now. "You've been distant, and I can't shake the feeling that you're not being completely honest with me." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the tension building. "Honestly, I'm just trying to get my life together. You know how overwhelming everything has been since Mom passed. I'm just trying to cope. I didn't think you'd be interrogating me." I felt a rush of anger, but I pushed it back down. "This isn't an interrogation. I just want us to be open with each other. If there's something going on, I need to know. We're sisters, Jenna. We should be able to trust each other." For a moment, silence hung between us. I could see her struggling with her emotions, caught between defensiveness and vulnerability. Finally, she sighed, running her hands through her hair. "Fine. I'll admit, I've been under a lot of pressure. But I'm not stealing anything. You have to believe me." I wanted to believe her. The words felt like a lifeline, but doubt lingered in the back of my mind. "What about the email? Can you explain that?" She hesitated before answering, her gaze dropping to the table. I might have made some hasty transactions when I was feeling overwhelmed. I didn't think they would raise any red flags. It's just money moving around, nothing serious." "Jenna, you can't just ignore things like that. They're serious to the bank, and they should be to you too. If you're struggling, I want to help you, but you need to be honest with me about what's going on. I don't want your help. I want to handle this on my own, she snapped, her frustration bubbling to the surface. Can't you understand that? Her words stung, and for a moment, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. This wasn't how I envisioned our conversation going. I'm not trying to control you, Jenna. I just don't want to see you get hurt, and I don't want to be hurt again either. She looked at me, her eyes softening slightly. I get it, but I promise. I'm not trying to do anything shady. I'm just trying to get by. I watched her, searching for any hint of truth in her words. Okay, I want to believe you, but I need to know that you're really okay. Can you promise me that you'll be transparent moving forward? Yeah, I promise. Just give me some space to figure things out, she replied, her voice quieter now. I nodded, still feeling a mix of relief and doubt. I wanted to trust her, but there was still that nagging feeling in my gut. As our conversation shifted to lighter topics, I couldn't shake the thoughts swirling in my mind. What if she was still trying to manipulate things? What if this was just another layer of deception? In the days that followed, I tried to put those concerns aside, focusing on my own healing and rebuilding my life. But every time I saw Jenna, a part of me remained guarded, watching for signs that she was slipping back into old habits. The unease was like a shadow, lurking just out of sight. Then, one evening, I received another email from the bank. This time, it was regarding my own account, and I froze as I read the subject line. Unusual activity detected. My heart sank. What now? I clicked the email open, and what I discovered sent chills down my spine. I clicked the email open, and what I discovered sent chills down my spine. There was a series of transactions listed, all marked as suspicious. My heart raced as I scanned the details. A large sum of money had been transferred out of my account, money that I had earmarked for my therapy sessions, my rent, and the small essentials that kept my life afloat. I could hardly breathe as I quickly grabbed my phone, dialing the bank's customer service. The ringing felt endless, and when a representative finally picked up, my voice trembled as I explained my situation. I could hear the fatigue in her voice as she pulled up my account details, and I felt a rush of nausea when she confirmed that the transactions were indeed real. Ma'am, it looks like a transfer was initiated from your account to an external account, she informed me. There are also several small purchases made in rapid succession, all flagged for review. I could hardly process her words. Who would do this to me? My mind immediately flicked back to Jenna. Had she somehow accessed my account again? A surge of panic coursed through me as I remembered our recent conversation. Her insistence that she was trying to change. Maybe it was all just a ruse to keep me off guard. Can you freeze my account? I asked desperately. I need you to stop any further transactions. After what felt like an eternity of verifying my identity, the representative assured me that my account would be frozen for the time being while they investigated the suspicious activity. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I felt betrayed, not just by Jenna, but by the very system I had relied on to keep my finances safe. For the next few days, I was consumed by a whirlwind of anxiety and anger. I replayed the moment Jenna had tried to convince me she was on my side. Could I really trust her at all? I had given her the benefit of the doubt, but now it felt like I was staring into a dark abyss, wondering just how deep her betrayal could go. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I began digging through my own records. I scoured my emails and account statements, looking for anything that could give me a clue about the recent transactions. With every click and every scroll, I felt a growing sense of dread. I was looking for answers, but all I found were more questions. Then I decided to confront Jenna. I couldn't let this slide any longer. I had to know if she was behind this, or if it was simply a coincidence. That Friday, I invited her over for dinner, trying to keep my expression neutral, despite the storm brewing inside me. As I set the table, I practiced what I wanted to say. Jenna, I need to talk to you about something serious. I imagined the conversation in my head, rehearsing my lines over and over. When she arrived, I put on a facade of normalcy, but the tension crackled in the air like electricity. We made small talk over dinner, but I could hardly taste the food. After a few awkward bites, I finally blurted it out. Jenna, I received an alert from the bank about some unusual activity in my account. I want to know if you had anything to do with it. Her face paled, and for a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she dropped her fork, and it clattered against the plate. I swear I didn't do anything, she finally said, her voice trembling. I would never take money from you. I'm trying to make things right. Then how do you explain this? I pressed, my heart racing. I've been trying to work on trusting you, but then this happens. It just feels too coincidental. Jenna's gaze fell to the table, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. Maybe someone hacked your account. You know how easy it is for that to happen these days. Her suggestion hung in the air, and I considered it for a moment. Could it really be a hack? Or was she just trying to deflect suspicion? The doubt gnawed at me, but a part of me wanted to believe her. I think I need to take more precautions, I said finally, my voice softer. I can't risk losing any more money, not after everything. The atmosphere shifted as Jenna seemed to sense my resolve. I understand, she replied, her tone earnest. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to cut ties completely. Cut ties. It's not that simple, Jenna. You're still my sister, I said, feeling torn. But I can't ignore what's happening. I need to protect myself. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us grappling with the weight of the conversation. The love I had for her warred with the betrayal I felt. I wanted to believe that she was trying to change, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the past was still lingering, casting a shadow over our future. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I felt a sense of resolve wash over me. I knew I had to take action, not just for myself, but for our relationship. I needed to confront the truth, whatever that might be. If Jenna was innocent, I had to support her. If she wasn't, I had to be prepared to protect myself. Whatever the outcome, I was determined to face it head on. The next morning, I woke up with a mix of anxiety and determination swirling in my chest. I had spent the night thinking about how to approach Jenna, wondering if I should confront her directly or give her space. After all, trust isn't something you can just reclaim overnight. As I sipped my coffee, the steam curling up into the air felt like a gentle nudge, pushing me toward the decision I needed to make. I couldn't keep putting it off. I decided to invite Jenna over for breakfast, hoping that the casual atmosphere would ease the tension between us. I set the table with our favorite dishes, scrambled eggs and toast, and tried to keep my mind focused on the moment. When the doorbell rang, my heart raced. I opened the door, and there she stood, looking almost like a stranger. The weight of our past hung heavily in the air between us. "Hey," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "Hey," I replied, forcing a smile, even though my stomach was churning. "Come in." We settled at the table, the sound of silverware clinking against plates filling the silence. Jenna picked at her food, and I could feel the tension creeping back in. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to break the ice. "So, how have you been?" She looked up, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "I've been okay, I guess. Just trying to figure things out." "Yeah, I get that," I said, my fingers nervously tracing the edge of my plate. "I've been thinking a lot too, about us, and everything that's happened." Jenna's expression shifted, and I could see the tension in her shoulders tighten. "I know, I've been thinking about it too. I want to talk, but I don't even know where to start. Why don't we just be honest? I suggested, my heart racing. About everything. We can't keep dancing around the issue. She nodded, her gaze dropping to her plate. You're right. I don't want to lose you. But I also don't want to keep dragging you down with me. That was the moment I realized how much her fear mirrored my own. I had spent so much time worrying about being hurt that I hadn't fully considered the pain she was feeling. You won't lose me easily, Jenna, but I need to know if you're still involved in things that could hurt us both. She looked up, her eyes pleading. I'm trying to get out of that life, I swear, but it's complicated. I thought I could manage it, but it's spiraling out of control. Complicated how? I asked, feeling a surge of urgency. Jenna, I need to understand the extent of this. It's not just money anymore. There are people involved who don't take kindly to being crossed. I got in too deep, and now I'm scared. I don't know how to get out without making things worse. My heart sank. I felt the ground shift beneath me, and for a moment, I was paralyzed by fear. What do you mean by people involved? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I mean people who don't play nice, she said, her voice shaking. I've borrowed from the wrong people to cover my debts. I thought I could keep it hidden, but it's all coming to a head, and I don't know what to do. A chill ran down my spine. I had heard stories about situations like this, but I had never thought it would touch my life so closely. Jenna, have you talked to anyone? A lawyer? A professional? I didn't want to involve anyone else. I didn't want to drag you into this, she replied, desperation in her eyes. But now I realize I can't do it alone. What about the money you owe? I asked. How much is it? She hesitated, taking a deep breath. It's a lot more than I thought. I'm scared. Okay? I don't know how to fix it. I felt a wave of emotion crash over me. Anger, frustration, but most of all, fear. I had come here to support her, to help her find a way out, but now it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only thing waiting for me below was darkness. I want to help you, Jenna, but I need you to be completely honest with me. I can't help if I don't know everything. Tears filled her eyes, and for a moment, I saw the little girl I used to know, the one who would come to me with scraped knees and a desperate need for reassurance. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't, I promised, my heart aching for both of us. But we need a plan. What do you think we should do? As we talked through possibilities, I asked myself a million questions. How did we get here? Was it too late to turn back? I paused, considering something. If you were in my shoes, how would you handle it? Would you cut ties? Or would you fight for your sister? Let me know below. By the time we finished breakfast, I felt a sense of urgency settle in. We could face this together, but only if she was willing to fully embrace the truth and let go of the past. Jenna, I'll help you, but you have to promise me that you'll be open and honest from here on out. No more secrets. I promise, she said, her voice steady for the first time that morning. And in that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could get through this, but it was going to take all of us. Our trust, our honesty, and our love for each other. The path ahead was still uncertain, but at least we were taking those first steps together. I spent the rest of the day wrestling with my thoughts. The cold, harsh reality of our situation loomed over me like a dark cloud. Jenna had betrayed my trust, and that betrayal felt like a knife piercing through the very fabric of our sisterly bond. Yet, as I watched her that morning, vulnerable, scared, and remorseful, I couldn't help but feel a surge of compassion. I had always believed in the strength of family, but this was a test I never expected to face. Would I be able to forgive her, even after everything that had happened? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in the living room, I found myself pacing back and forth, the weight of our shared past heavy on my shoulders. Memories flooded my mind. Our childhood adventures, the countless nights spent talking about our dreams, and the way we used to lift each other up. Those moments felt so distant now, overshadowed by the events that had transpired during the will reading. I was scared that this wasn't just a bump in the road. It could be the end of everything we'd built together. That evening, I received a message from my lawyer. I hadn't been ready to deal with the legalities just yet, but I knew I had to face them head on. The message was straightforward. We needed to organize a follow-up meeting. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. The thought of confronting the inheritance issues again made my stomach churn, but I also knew that I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. Jenna and I had made a pact to face the truth together. It was time to put that into action. The next morning, Jenna and I met at a local cafe. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and for a moment, it felt like we could pretend that everything was normal again. We ordered our drinks, and I watched her nervously fidget with her hands. I could see the weight of guilt etched on her face, a stark contrast to the carefree person she used to be. "So, what's our game plan?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Jenna took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto mine. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I know I messed up, and I don't want to keep living in the shadows of my mistakes. I want to face the family and make this right, but I also need to know how to approach them. I'm scared they'll never forgive me." Her honesty struck a chord with me. "They might surprise you, Jenna. They might see the change in you, but it's going to take time, and it starts with you showing them you're willing to own up to your actions." We spent the next hour crafting a plan. I suggested we write a letter to the family, outlining our intentions and asking for a chance to explain ourselves. It felt like a small step, but it was a step toward healing. Jenna agreed, her eyes lighting up with determination. "I'll take responsibility for what I did. I'll be honest about everything. I have to show them that I'm serious about mending the relationship." After our meeting, I returned home, feeling a mixture of hope and apprehension. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, and there would be rocky moments. But I also realized that this was a chance for both of us to grow, to redefine our relationship. As I settled into my evening routine, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to do more. I had to protect not just myself, but also Jenna, and that meant taking further action regarding the inheritance. I opened my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I contemplated what I needed to do. Freezing Jenna's bank account was not a decision I had taken lightly. I still felt uneasy about the idea, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was necessary. I needed to ensure that she wouldn't make any rash decisions, especially if she was still vulnerable to manipulation. I reached out to my lawyer again, explaining my concerns and asking for advice on how to proceed. The conversation was straightforward. He assured me that freezing her account was a common legal precaution in situations like ours. Still, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I didn't want to punish her, but I needed to protect our future. "Are you sure this is the right thing to do?" I asked him, my voice wavering. "I don't want to hurt her more than she's already been hurt." "It's a tough love approach," he replied. "It might feel harsh, but sometimes it's necessary for everyone's protection. Just ensure that you communicate with her about it." I hung up, feeling a weight lift, but also a new burden settle in. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. That evening, I sat Jenna down, looking her directly in the eyes. "I've made a decision," I said cautiously. "I'm going to freeze your bank account temporarily." Her expression shifted from surprise to understanding. "I get it. You're trying to protect me, but I promise I'll be careful. I can't blame you for wanting to take this precaution. I want you to be accountable, Jenna. I want us to move forward, but I need to know you're committed to change." She nodded, her expression serious. "I promise I will be. This is hard, but I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions." As we talked, I felt a sense of solidarity growing between us. Yes, we were still navigating the murky waters of betrayal, but we were also beginning to forge a new path, one that was built on honesty, accountability, and a shared commitment to healing. The next few days passed in a blur. We focused on drafting the letter to our family, pouring our hearts into every word. With each stroke of the pen, I felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by a cautious optimism for the future. I could see the changes in Jenna, and despite the pain, I knew we were moving in the right direction. But as we prepared to face our family, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was still ahead. Would they accept her? Or would the scars of betrayal run too deep? As the day of the family gathering approached, my stomach churned with a mix of anxiety and hope. I had spent countless hours rehearsing what I would say, thinking about how my family would react to Jenna's admission. Would they understand her struggles? Or would they only see the sister who had tried to sabotage me? I wanted so desperately for them to see how far she had come, but I knew that forgiveness wasn't a switch you could just flip on. It was a process, one that required time and understanding, and I was praying that my family would be willing to embrace that. When the day finally arrived, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my hair and smoothing down my dress. I looked at my reflection and took a deep breath. I wasn't just preparing to face my family. I was preparing to face years of hurt and betrayal. I had to remind myself that I wasn't just bringing Jenna to the table. I was bringing hope for healing. I slipped my phone into my pocket, the draft of our letter saved and ready to be shared. We arrived at my parents' house, and as I walked through the door, the smell of my mom's famous lasagna wafted through the air, wrapping around me like a warm hug. Family gatherings had always been a source of comfort for me, a chance to reconnect with the people I loved. But this time felt different. I could see the tension in the air, the unspoken words hanging like storm clouds ready to burst. My parents greeted us with warm smiles, but I could sense the undercurrents of concern. Jenna hung back slightly, her hands fidgeting nervously, as we made our way into the living room, where my siblings were already gathered. The room was filled with familiar faces, but today, each one felt like a stranger, wrapped in layers of judgment and confusion. "Hey everyone," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Thanks for coming together today. I know it's a lot, but I think it's important we all talk." I caught Jenna's eye as I spoke, and I could see the flicker of fear beneath her brave exterior. I wanted to reach out and reassure her, to let her know that I was right there with her. But before I could say anything, my older brother, Alex, spoke up. "Yeah, what's going on? You seem different." His tone was cautious, and I could feel the weight of his scrutiny. "Actually, there's something Jenna wants to share with all of you," I said, nodding toward her. The words felt heavy on my tongue, and I hoped my family would be open to listening. Jenna took a deep breath, and I could see her resolve harden. "I know this is unexpected," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "but I need to apologize for my actions during the will reading. I did something really wrong, and I've been working hard to change. I don't want to hide from it anymore." Silence fell over the room like a blanket, and I could see the shock on my siblings' faces. My sister Lily looked at Jenna with wide eyes, clearly trying to process what she had just heard. "Are you serious?" Lily finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "You tried to take money that didn't belong to you." "I know," Jenna replied, her voice steadying, "and I'm so sorry for what I did. I let greed and jealousy cloud my judgment, and I hurt the people I care about most. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want you to know I'm trying to be better. I'm in therapy, and I'm committed to making things right." I watched as my family absorbed her words. My parents exchanged concerned glances, and I could feel the tension in the air thicken. But then something unexpected happened. My mom stepped forward, her eyes softening. "Jenna, I appreciate you being honest with us. That takes a lot of courage. Jenna's shoulders seemed to relax a little, and I knew that my mum's support meant the world to her. Thank you, Jenna said, her voice cracking slightly. I know I don't deserve it, but I really am trying to change. But not everyone was ready to extend grace. Alex crossed his arms, the skepticism evident on his face. It's going to take more than words, Jenna. Trust is earned, and you shattered ours. I know, she replied, her eyes filling with tears. I'm just asking for a chance to show you that I can be different. As the conversation unfolded, I felt the mixture of emotions swirling around us. Some family members were more receptive than others, and I could see the cracks in the facade of our once tight-knit family. There were moments of anger, confusion, and even a few supportive comments. It was messy and raw, but it was real. The air was charged with a sense of reckoning, and as difficult as it was, I could see it was necessary. After what felt like hours of back and forth, my mom finally spoke up again. I think we all need to take a step back and process this. It's a lot to take in. Her words hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on us. I glanced at Jenna, who looked both relieved and terrified. I knew this wouldn't be the end of the conversation. It would be just the beginning. As we wrapped up the gathering, I felt a mixture of hope and dread. Our family was fractured, but perhaps we were on the verge of something new, a chance to rebuild, to face the past together. As I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had crossed a significant threshold. Yes, there were still wounds to heal, but we had taken the first step toward understanding. I reached for my phone and typed out a message to Jenna. We did it. It wasn't easy, but we faced it together. As I hit send, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Maybe, just maybe, we were on the path to healing after all. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I oscillated between hope and anxiety, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. Jenna and I hadn't spoken much since the will reading, and I was trying to give her the space she needed, even though I didn't quite know how to navigate this new territory between us. It was like we were both standing on opposite sides of a chasm, unsure how to bridge the gap. I found myself reflecting on our childhood, those carefree days when we played dress-up in our mom's old clothes, pretending to be princesses. I missed that simplicity, the bond we once shared. It felt hauntingly distant now, like a dream I couldn't quite grasp. I wondered if we could ever return to that kind of connection, especially after everything that had been revealed. One evening, I decided to take a long walk to clear my head. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue across the neighborhood. I could hear laughter from the park, children playing, families enjoying the warm evening. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling inside me. As I walked, I thought about the inheritance, what it meant not just in terms of money, but the emotional legacy of our family, the house, the memories within its walls, and even the pieces of furniture that had seen better days. What would happen to them? Were they worth the price of our relationship? When I returned home, I found an unexpected message from Jenna. "Can we talk?" It read. My heart raced. The last time we'd talked, it had been a confrontation. Now it felt like a fragile olive branch, and I was determined not to break it. We agreed to meet at our favorite cafe, the one where we used to sneak away from school to indulge in overpriced pastries. As I walked in, I spotted her sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. She looked different, more vulnerable, less guarded. I took a deep breath and approached her, my heart pounding with uncertainty. "Hey," I said softly, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking a lot." I nodded, encouraging her to continue. "About everything that happened?" "Yeah," she said, her eyes darting to the window, as if searching for the right words. "I didn't mean for things to escalate like that. I was scared. I thought if I could get my hands on the inheritance, it would solve everything. Her honesty took me aback. I get it, I said slowly. I really do. We're all scared in our own ways. It just felt like I was losing everything. Mom's gone, and I thought if I had something, it would keep me grounded, she explained, her voice trembling. But instead, it just pushed us apart. There was a rawness to her words that caught me off guard. I realized that beneath her actions lay a deep fear of abandonment, a fear I could relate to all too well. Jenna, I think we both have been trying to cling to something that's already changed, but we can't let this inheritance tear us apart. We have to find a way to work through it together. A flicker of hope sparked in her eyes. Do you really think we can? I leaned forward, determined to believe in this moment. I do, but it's going to take effort from both of us. We need to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Can we promise to do that? She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I can do that. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. We reminisced about our childhood, shared our fears, and slowly began peeling back the layers of hurt and misunderstanding that had built up between us. I talked about how I had felt betrayed, how it hurt to think she would go behind my back, while she opened up about her insecurities and her desperation for stability in such an unstable time. As we finished our coffees, I felt lighter. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a start. We agreed to take things one step at a time and to keep the lines of communication open. I left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose. I believed we could rebuild our relationship, brick by brick, but it would require patience and understanding. A few days later, I decided it was time to take a more proactive approach regarding the inheritance. I reached out to the attorney who handled my parents' will. I wanted to ensure everything was clear and above board. I had my suspicions that there were still loose ends that could complicate things further, and I needed to be prepared. When I walked into the attorney's office, the weight of the past pressed heavily upon my shoulders. I was ushered into a small conference room where he awaited me. He was a middle-aged man with a kind demeanor, but there was a professionalism about him that reminded me this was serious business. He explained the details of the will once more, making sure I understood everything. I listened intently, my mind racing with thoughts of Jenna and what her intentions truly were. Your sister seemed quite insistent about her claims, he said, glancing up from his notes. I want to make sure you're both on the same page moving forward. I nodded, feeling the familiar twinge of anxiety. We're working on it, I replied, but I want to protect my interests as well. Is there any way I can ensure that things remain fair? He nodded thoughtfully. There are legal measures we can put in place to protect your share, but I encourage you to resolve any personal issues with your sister first. It's always better to come to an agreement as a family before things turn contentious. His words resonated deeply. I knew that the emotional stakes were just as high as the financial ones. If I wanted to protect our family legacy, I had to start with healing the family itself. I left his office, determined to approach this with clarity and purpose. It was clear that the path ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it head on. No more hiding, no more fear, just honesty, love, and hopefully, a restored bond with Jenna. I drove home, the weight of the day pressing down on me. My mind was a storm of thoughts, swirling with the implications of what had just happened. The conversation with the lawyer echoed in my head. Heal the family first. I was determined, but the question loomed large. How do you heal something that feels so broken? The moment I stepped through the door, I was greeted by a familiar silence. It wasn't the comforting kind, but rather an echo of unresolved tension hanging in the air. My heart raced as I considered how to approach Jenna. I wanted to talk, to clear the air, but I also feared her reaction. What if she was still defensive, still angry? I took a deep breath and headed to the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water in an attempt to calm my nerves. As I leaned against the counter, staring out the window, I was hit with a memory of our childhood. I recalled the times we'd stay up late, whispering secrets and dreams under the covers, the bond that once felt unbreakable. I thought about how quickly things had changed, how greed and fear had chipped away at our relationship. With a newfound resolve, I decided it was time to reach out. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over her contact. What would I even say? "Hey Jenna, let's talk about our family's future, and maybe our past." It felt inadequate. I needed to convey how much this meant to me, to us. Finally, I sent a simple text. "Can we talk? I think we need to." I hit send and waited, my heart racing. A few minutes passed that felt like an eternity. Just as I began to doubt whether she would respond, my phone buzzed. "Sure. When?" The simplicity of her reply both relieved and terrified me. I quickly typed back, suggesting we meet at our favorite cafe, a place filled with memories, laughter, and perhaps a glimmer of hope. When the time came, I arrived early, needing a moment to gather my thoughts. As I sat at a small table near the window, I watched people pass by. Each face told a story, families laughing, couples chatting, a reminder of the connections we all hold dear. I was struck by the realization that while I was here to fight for what was right, I was also fighting for the chance to reconnect with my sister. When Jenna walked in, she looked just as nervous as I felt. Her eyes darted around the cafe, finally settling on me. I waved, trying to muster a smile, but the tension was palpable. She approached, and we exchanged awkward hugs, a far cry from the warm embraces we used to share. "Thanks for coming," I said, gesturing for her to sit. "Yeah, of course," she replied, her voice soft. There was an underlying tension, a hesitation that hung between us like a thick fog. I took a deep breath, deciding to dive in. I wanted to talk about everything that happened at the will reading. Jenna shifted in her seat, her hands fidgeting with the edge of the tablecloth. "I know. I don't want to fight." "Neither do I," said, my voice steadying. "But we can't ignore what happened. It hurt to see you push for more than what was fair, especially when it felt like it was about more than just money." She looked down, her expression pained. I was scared. I thought I wouldn't get anything, and I panicked. "I never meant to hurt you." I nodded, understanding her fear. "I get that. But we both loved Mom and Dad, and I believed they would want us to work together, not against each other." Her eyes met mine, a flicker of recognition passing between us. "I miss how things used to be. I want that back too." The admission opened a door I hadn't realized was still closed. "Then let's start fresh," I suggested. "Let's talk about how we can make sure we both feel secure moving forward, without letting greed come between us." For the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I'd like that. I don't want to lose you, sis." As we began to discuss how to approach the inheritance with fairness and transparency, I felt the weight of the past begin to lift. We talked about the property, the family heirlooms, and how we could honor our parents' memory while ensuring that neither of us felt slighted. It was a long conversation, filled with moments of laughter and a few tears, but each shared memory brought us closer. By the end of our meeting, we had an understanding, a pact to rebuild our relationship on honesty and respect. We agreed to consult with the lawyer together to ensure both our interests were protected. As I left the cafe, a lightness filled my heart. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about reclaiming our sisterhood. I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe we could do this after all. I had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, I believed in the possibility of healing. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed our conversation in my mind, a soft smile forming on my lips. I still had concerns about the future, about trust and finances. But I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a while: hope. The road ahead would be challenging, but I knew I wouldn't have to walk it alone. We had taken the first step together, and somehow that made all the difference. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of determination that I hadn't felt in ages. The sun streamed through my bedroom window, illuminating the room in warm hues. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face the day. I grabbed my phone and sent a quick message to my sister, letting her know that I was ready to meet with the lawyer later that week. To my surprise, she responded almost immediately, her excitement palpable through the text. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. As the week progressed, I found myself diving into preparation for our meeting. I spent hours going through documents, trying to gather everything I could about our father's estate. I wanted to be informed and ready, not just for myself, but for the future I envisioned with my sister. I remembered the way she had looked at me in the cafe, that flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. I wanted to protect that newfound connection. When the day of the meeting arrived, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. I arrived at the law office early, pacing the waiting room and mentally rehearsing what I wanted to say. I could feel my heart racing as I thought about how much was at stake, not just the inheritance, but the future of our relationship. When my sister finally walked in, her expression mirrored my own. We exchanged a nervous smile, but it felt like a silent agreement passed between us. As we sat down with the lawyer, I couldn't help but notice how serious the atmosphere felt. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman with sharp glasses and a steely demeanor, wasted no time getting to the point. She laid out the details of our father's will, and as she spoke, the reality of our situation began to sink in. Our father's estate was more complicated than I had anticipated. There were properties, investments, and a surprisingly intricate web of financial obligations. My mind raced as she explained the nuances of everything, and I could see my sister's brow, furrowed in concentration. It was a lot to take in, and I felt a sense of urgency to ensure that both of us were treated fairly. After the initial overview, the lawyer turned to us, asking if we had any questions. My sister spoke first, raising concerns about some of the properties that had been mentioned. It was clear that she had done her homework too, and I felt a swell of pride for her. We were both in this together, and it was refreshing to see her approach the situation with such seriousness. As the conversation progressed, the topic of the inheritance split arose again. The lawyer reminded us of our father's intentions, explaining how he wanted us to share everything equally. I glanced at my sister, and for a brief moment, I could see the tension in her shoulders ease. Perhaps she, too, was beginning to feel the weight of the past lift off her back. However, as we delved deeper into the financial details, I noticed that my sister's demeanor began to shift. A shadow crossed her face when the lawyer mentioned the specifics of a joint bank account that our father had set up for us. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I had frozen her account out of fear and anger, but I also knew that it had been a drastic measure. After the meeting, we stepped outside into the crisp air, the weight of the discussion heavy on both of us. I turned to her, searching for the right words. "I know this is tough," I said slowly, "but I really want us to make this work. Can we promise to keep communicating openly?" She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I want that too," she said softly, "but I can't help but feel like I've made a mess of everything." I reached out, placing my hand on her arm. "We both have, but we can fix it. We just have to be honest with each other." In that moment, I felt a shift. The air felt charged, and I realized that we were standing on the brink of something transformative. For the first time, we were putting the past behind us and focusing on building a future. As we parted ways that day, I felt a strange mix of hope and anxiety. My sister had agreed to meet again to discuss the specifics of our father's estate, and how we could manage it together. I was hopeful, but there was still that lingering fear in the back of my mind. Later that evening, I took a moment to reflect. I pulled out a journal I had kept since my father's passing. It was filled with thoughts, dreams, and even a few rants about my feelings toward my sister. As I flipped through the pages, I came across one entry where I had written, "I just want her to understand me." I sighed, realizing that this journey was not just about the inheritance, but about rebuilding the foundations of our sisterhood. It was about understanding each other's perspectives, fears, and desires. I closed the journal, determined to approach the next meeting with an open heart and mind. The days passed, and as I continued to prepare for our next steps, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the precipice of something significant. I found myself daydreaming about the future we could create together. Free from the shadows of our past, the idea of sharing the inheritance with her didn't seem so daunting anymore. As I lay in bed that night, I whispered a silent prayer for strength and clarity. I knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges, but I was ready to face them. After all, we were sisters, and if we could overcome the heartbreak and betrayal, maybe we could also discover forgiveness and love. I remember that day vividly, the day that would change everything for my sister and me. As I prepared for our meeting, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. The anticipation was palpable, but beneath it all, there was a flicker of hope. Hope that this time we could finally communicate, that we could finally listen to each other. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about healing. We chose a small cafe, a neutral ground where we could both feel comfortable. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but my stomach was a knot of nerves. When I saw her walk in, my heart raced. She looked just as anxious as I felt, glancing around the cafe, probably searching for a sign of reassurance. For a moment, I wanted to turn back the clock, to go back to the carefree days of our childhood when the biggest dilemma was who would get the last cookie. But life had other plans. As she approached the table, I caught a glimpse of the vulnerability in her eyes. We sat down, and the tension was almost tangible. I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. I started with the easiest part, small talk about work and life. It felt like wading through shallow waters, but it was necessary. It was our way of testing the currents before diving deeper. But eventually, we couldn't avoid the elephant in the room any longer. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest, as I looked into her eyes. "Can we talk about the inheritance?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I could see her face shift, the walls she had built around her emotions rising again. "Is that all you care about?" she replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her tone. "You think money can fix everything?" That question hung in the air, and I knew then that we were at a crossroads. I had to respond, but I wanted to make sure I spoke from my heart. "It's not just about the money, Jenna. It's about what it represents for us. It's about our family's legacy, the memories we shared. I want us to find a way to honor that together." For the first time, I saw her resolve waver. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface began to crack. "You don't get it, do you? It's not just about the money or the memories. It's about betrayal. It's about how I felt when you chose to stay with Mom, instead of supporting me during Dad's illness." Her words cut deep, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. "I know I made mistakes, Jenna, but I was scared. I didn't know how to handle everything, and I thought I was doing what was best. I didn't realize the pain it caused you until it was too late." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history settling heavily between us. I could feel my chest tighten as I searched for the right words. What if we could start over? What if we could find a way to honor Dad's memory together? We could use the inheritance to create something meaningful, a foundation, a scholarship, anything that could keep his spirit alive. Her eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimmer of hope reflected back at me. "You really mean that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do," I replied earnestly. "I want to rebuild what we lost, Jenna. I want us to be sisters again." And just like that, the ice between us began to melt. We spent the next few hours sharing our fears and dreams, laughing over old memories, and confronting the pain that had kept us apart for so long. It was as if a dam had burst, allowing the flood of emotions to rush forth. We cried, we laughed, and slowly but surely, we started to understand each other again. As we left the cafe, I felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. We had agreed to meet weekly to discuss how we could move forward together, not just with the inheritance, but with our relationship as sisters. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I was no longer afraid of it. I had faith in our ability to create something beautiful from the ashes of our past. Months passed, and our weekly meetings became a cherished ritual. We explored ways to honor our father's memory, from volunteering in our community to setting up a scholarship in his name. Each step we took together brought us closer, and with every shared laugh and tear, I felt the gap that had once seemed insurmountable shrink into nothingness. Reflecting on our journey, I realized that it wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about rediscovering the bond that had always existed between us, one that had been tested, but ultimately proved unbreakable. It was about forgiveness, not just for each other, but for ourselves. We were both learning that the past didn't have to define our future. As I sit here, sharing this part of my journey with you, I can't help but wonder, what would you do if you found yourself in a similar situation? Would you be willing to confront your fears and reach out for reconciliation? Let me know below. In the end, I learned that while the past may shape us, it doesn't have to bind us. Our sisterhood, once strained by misunderstandings and hurt, had emerged stronger than ever. And as we walked into our new future, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for my sister, but for the lessons we had learned along the way. Life has a way of bringing us full circle, and I'm grateful that ours led us back to each other.